Hello and welcome. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace and blessings be with you all out there, brothers and sisters. And peace and blessings be with you, Brother John Abdus-Samad. Today I am joined by my friend, my brother, my companion, Jonathan Abdus-Samad. And if you guys have been following me, I've had a couple of interviews and sessions with John in the past. John has a background in spiritual practice, meditative practice. He spent a lot of time upon the spiritual path and ultimately found his way to Al-Islam, the way of the prophets, the way of the religion and the revelation that Allah Almighty has blessed us with. Welcome, John.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. John and I were recently discussing, and I was discussing, a phenomenon now. So we're in Ramadan. We're here in this beautiful and blessed month where we are enjoying so much of this spiritual energy, spiritual power. People are motivated. People are praying in the mosques. People are listening to lectures. And what we want to do is take the conversation again a little bit further because, again, as always, we have to point out that Islam has its two dimensions, its outer dimension and its inner dimension. The outer dimension is submitting to Allah by what He has required of us, right? The 5 pillars of Islam, for example. Praying, fasting, zakat, so on. The inner dimension of Islam is submitting to Allah emotionally, is learning to submit to Allah Almighty through our thoughts, or really I should say, learning to submit and surrender the mind, to humble the mind, to still the mind. And if this doesn't take place, if we don't learn to develop this, and we can call this perhaps self-control, self-mastery, our Islam is not complete, and it will continue to harm our lives and our relationships. It doesn't matter how much a person prays in the mosque, how many lectures one listens to on YouTube or attends in gatherings. If we cannot learn to control ourselves, our thoughts and our emotions, it will continue to ravage and ruin our lives. So I thought this would be a good topic, John, because I'm sure you've seen it. I've lived through and seen it my entire life. This lack of, let's say, wholeness or completeness that we fall prey to when it comes to our faith and our religion. We, again, want to observe outwardly, but we forget the main thing, which is to observe, surrender, and submission inwardly. Let me see what your thoughts on this are so far, John.
Well, again, it has to do with being awake or not being awake. Being under the illusion, or we're always under illusions. We don't see how many illusions we are running, we are following. And it's so easy to think that we are doing something when actually we're just thinking about doing something. Just to go from the doing, the thinking, to actually embodying something, it can take decades to just start to. I'm speaking meditation, okay? Islam might be different, huh? I think it is probably different. But just people think they are, what I've seen in my meditation, study, is that people, illusions, deluded themselves into thinking that, and it's not because they are ill-intentioned, or that's how we are. That's how the mind works. We think that we know something, we just know about something. We think we know how to swim if we read books about swimming, that one is absurd, but it's basically the same. That happens about spiritual training. We read a book about how the mind works, it makes a lot of sense. We watch lectures, and we think, oh, I understand the ego, the nafs, I know all these fancy words, and I'm good now. I know what to do. But we can never do it because it's just in the mind. It's not in the heart, and it's not in the body. It has to be in the 3 places. It has to come down. The mind is just the first. It's just the first. You can learn how to ride a bike in your mind. It's not that useful, but it can be like a little bit useful. At least you know the principle. You know that you're gonna have to use your legs, but it's just by doing, by going on a bike and starting to try that you learn how to do it. And there is a feedback loop. When you start doing something physically, You are teaching your mind and your heart the reality of that thing. Okay? For example, it goes both ways. That's why Islam can be so efficient at transforming people, because Islam is a very embodied religion. We also do physically the surrender. We practice the surrender physically, and that way we are teaching our minds, our hearts, and our body. For example, it has been demonstrated now scientifically. They know that for a fact, that if you smile, you change your state of mind just by smiling, because your brain is inside your skull, and your brain doesn't know what's going on outside. But if you smile, you tell your brain that everything is all right. So your brain can now generate happiness and relaxation. So it has always been known by meditators, for example, that by adopting a vertical posture, by smiling, you can change your state of being. But that's a very important point. By trying to embody these practices, the charity, because if you practice imagination, you'll reach imaginary results, But if you practice really embodying your knowledge, you will teach your mind that it is a reality, and your mind will accept it deep. I don't mean the intellect at this point. Sometimes I use the word mind, but I also mean heart. Chinese, the Taoists, they have one word for mind and heart. So yeah, this heart, there's different ways to reach it. The intellect is not necessarily the fastest way to reach the heart. But as long as the heart has not been informed of what's going on, it's just imaginary. That's what I think. So the practice needs to be embodied.
That's a very good way of putting it. I'm remembering the hadith of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he says there will come a time when there is nothing left of Islam but its name, and they will recite the Quran, but it will not descend below their throats. So it's on the tongue, it's in the head, but it hasn't been embodied, it hasn't been actualized in the heart. The question is how to make religion real. How do we make our religion real so that we're not deluding ourselves by a lifetime of external and formal practice and sort of just immersion in the faith on one level, but it not becoming actualized and actually benefiting us internally? And what do I mean by this? There's no amount of attending lectures or attending gatherings or attending prayers, even in the mosque or dhikr circles, that will help you just on its own if we do not actualize and make real, if we don't come into integrity internally when it actually matters, which is in your personal life. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, for example, said, marriage is half the religion, and the best of you are they who are best to their families and their wives and their spouses. Because that is where the religion is made real. You can attend 1,000 lectures, read 1,000 books, and attend 1,000 circles and gatherings and prayers. And if you can't control your anger, if you can't control your emotions when you get triggered, it's all nothing. The benefit is not there. You could listen to 100 lectures on patience and read 100 books on the importance of patience, the divine attribute from Allah, as-sabur. But when the test comes, if you can't be patient, what is the benefit? In the akhirah, you're not going to be tested and quizzed on the intellectual, conceptual understanding of the word patience. We're going to be tested if we were actually able to be patient, if we were able to embody patience. And what did the Prophet of Allah say? Patience is at the first onset of a trouble or difficulty, hardship or calamity. Right at that moment is when it matters. Right when the test arises, right when the trial comes up, that is your opportunity to be patient. How can we learn patience, the reality of patience, if we don't, or I should say, if we're not required to exercise it, to practice it? And how can you be required to exercise or practice patience if you don't get triggered, if something doesn't arise that requires it? And by learning to be patient, we actually go through a healing process. We see how much of our own neuroses, our own fears, our own insecurities are the problem. It's not actually what's happening outside. It's our own wrong understanding or dysfunctional attitude towards things that causes this trouble and angst for us and for people around us. If we could just be patient, I've learned that patience is the doorway to wisdom, to knowledge, to understanding. If we could just be patient, clarity will come, wisdom will come, happiness will come, joy will come, blessings will come. What did the Messenger of Allah say? Wondrous are the affairs of the believer. Everything is good for him or her. If hardship and difficulty befalls them, they are patient, and that is blessing, that is goodness for them. If goodness and ease befall them, they are grateful, and that is also good for them. Everything is good for the believer. But if we're not patient, for example, in this example, we're missing the benefit. We're missing the religion. We're fooling ourselves. Islam is just then topical, superficial. It's like a tree or a form beautifully decorated but with no roots, no depth. Real depth is when the wind comes, the storm comes, the hardship comes, the trial comes, the difficulty comes, the challenge comes, and you can remain still. And I'm sure we'll get into this in this discussion, really how meditation is an invaluable practice in developing the self-awareness, the self-control, the root and the anchor to be able to remain stable when calamity or chaos arises.
Yes, definitely. You said it. I was about to say it. It's that anchor, that stillness that needs to be developed. If you're not still, you cannot see what's going on. It's like a camera. Try to use a camera without a tripod. You're never going to get a nice focus. You need stability. If you have stability, now your camera will take pictures and clear. You can focus your camera. It's going to be clear. So we need a little bit of stability, stillness. As you said, patience. Patience is an amazing tool for training the mind. Because what is patience? I like to always, go to what is it exactly that's going on when you are patient. You are not expressing. Patience is not about not feeling. It's not about not feeling emotions. It's about not expressing. You can be angry, but you're not expressing it. That's patience. Not feeling anger is not patience. A baby is not patient if, for example, if a baby is not drinking alcohol, he's not being sober. He doesn't know the desire to drink, But the man who was an alcoholic and refrained from drinking, he is meritorious. Not the baby, the man who is refraining from following the impulse. So patience is about sitting with the discomfort. That's what patience is. And how we learn to do that? Through practicing stillness, which is people call meditation. Now I'm almost hesitant to use that word because it is used for so many different things that has nothing to do with what's interesting. But stillness, the practice of not running away from discomfort, either hunger, thirst, but could be pain. Pain can be very useful because what's going on when we have emotions, it's uncomfortable in the body and we don't like it. We don't want to feel any emotions. So we want to escape. So one of the ways is fight. There's fight or flight. And one of the ways is to fight back by responding to an insult, by another insult, or by defending yourself. That way you're not feeling, you're not seeing what's going on inside of you. But if you can shut the mind a little bit, and I'd say it's not really stop the mind, at least not in the beginning. I'd say crank up the volume of the physical sensation. As if you have 10 units of consciousness and you can use 9 of them, for your sensation, physical sensations. There's not enough left to think, your thoughts won't be a problem. But we are usually the opposite. We have 10 units in thoughts and we can't even feel what's going on in the body. We're having emotions, but we're almost unaware of it. Sometimes you have to tell someone, hey, stop being so angry. And they will argue with you. I'm not angry. Yes, you are. And you don't know. So we have to become aware of what's going on inside the body. Because anyway, that's more real than what's going on there. Huh? This is the least reliable part of ourselves, the intellectual mind. The body changes also, but at a much slower pace. Tomorrow, my body will basically be the same as today, yeah, more or less. But my thoughts will be different. I'll be a different man in 20 minutes. I'll be, captivated by something else, and I'll be I can be different personalities with different people. The intellect is the least real part of you, and we hang on to that so dearly as if it's ourselves. If we could learn to let go of that a little bit, have you seen pictures of the planet Earth? Just a small crust on the surface is the Earth that we actually can inhabit and dig and because deeper than that is molten lava. The core of the Earth is not a small; it's a big core. Most of it is molten lava, and just the surface is what we call the Earth. And I think it's the same with the human psyche. We know only the surface of what we are. And it's the least real. It's the most changing, like the surface of the earth can change, You live in California. It can change very quickly with some, earthquake, and suddenly you feel that it's not as stable as you thought it was. That was another illusion. So if we can just dig deeper, just go to the core, forget the surface and go to the core and stay there. You will see that, first of all, there's no repression because you're inside. To repress your emotions, you have to be outside. You can't repress when you're inside. And stay there with the peace. And that's the stillness. We are talking about stillness. There's other names. There's also quiet, silence, peace. It's all different names for that stillness, the eye of the storm. Go there. That's the real, the most real you, if we can use that word. The most real you can reach. And you will see that you will wake up from a nightmare sometimes, and you will say, what was I thinking? Because you step out of your delusions. And if you practice doing that over and over, your delusions will have less and less weight, less reality to you. Your dreams will be more translucent because you're going to have developed this familiarity with unhooking from thoughts and sinking down into the real you, which is it's not something you do even. Actually, the more you try to do it, the less you succeed. It's something you are. And how to feel it? Stop doing. Stop the doing.
Yeah.
And you will feel it. You will see.
That's it. Stillness. The word that I would really come back to consistently or continually is Islam, surrender. That really is the essence and the foundation of the way, the religion, and even the practice. To just become still or surrendered in a real state of submission, not just outward submission, but inward submission. I just want to remind everybody that what we're talking about here, again, is this idea of making the religion real, shifting from concept and theory and idea and the accumulation of information, sort of just dancing around the idea of faith with our outward and external practice and observance and attachment, to the reality of the faith, which is going to lead us to the reality of ourselves. It's going to lead us to the reality of who we truly are, the reality of who we are, to become real human beings. And what you're mentioning here, John, was a lot about sort of identification with our thoughts. Like, we are just, what we think we are is what they say the tip of the iceberg. Just like 1/10 or so of the iceberg that's visible and on the surface. And what we really are, we're completely disconnected from. It's beneath the surface of the water. And the only way we can come into contact with that is with quiet, with stillness, with surrender. It's the only way. Otherwise, we think that we are our thoughts. We think that we are our emotions. That's why we defend them so vehemently. That's why we defend our thoughts and our emotions so passionately, because we think that they are us. And they're not us. They're just movements of the mind. And you are not your mind. If a Muslim doesn't understand this, you are missing the religion. It's still a fake religion. The only way to make this religion real is to truly put the forehead to the ground in a state of absolute submission and surrender. That means to make the mind still. It is the only way to make this religion real. Now, I want to take a step back and maybe discuss a little bit about the cause of emotions. Where do emotions come from? Let's try to analyze what our emotions actually are. If I'm angry, for example, or if I feel anger, am I really angry? Like, what's the cause of that anger? What's the cause of the fear, the jealousy, the hatred, the regret? What is the cause of these different emotions? Well, all emotions are preceded by a thought, by thinking. A thought enters the brain, usually a fear based on pain, and that thought then becomes converted by the body and the mind into emotion, an emotional experience. It's still not real. We experience it as real. We think it's real, but it's actually not real. It's just a chemical effect of thoughts. Thoughts are what create emotions. If we do not become free from our emotions and our thoughts, we will never be free as human beings. We're still slaves and servants to the self, to the mind. We haven't shifted yet. We haven't really awoken, as you said earlier in the beginning. We haven't woken up from the dream of the world and the dream of the self. Islam requires mastery over ourselves. Islam requires transcendence over the self. And the way that this takes place is by learning to overcome and transcend our own thoughts and our emotions, which are always rooted typically in some sort of falsehood. So maybe you could speak a little bit about this, John. Your thoughts, your perspective on transcending and overcoming emotions, even becoming aware of them and disidentifying, dissociating from our thoughts and our emotions, because they're not real. They're just like passing ships in the sea of our being. We don't have to become attached to them and believe them as if they're absolutely true. And even if there is some valid, let's say, justification to emotions that we're feeling, we still have to get in control of ourselves in order to be of any benefit in the real world, or to take any type of action that will be constructive and positive rather than destructive and negative. We still have to overcome the emotion. Yes, you could legitimately be grieved. You could legitimately be hurt. You could legitimately be angry. But if you act out of that negative emotion, you will only cause more and more chaos and destruction in your life and in the lives of those around you.
You said it, emotions, and the image they use in some schools of meditation is consciousness is the sky, emotions are the clouds, like clouds. We identify with the clouds, but we are the sky. So the weather may change, but the sky is never actually changed by the weather. The sky remains. That's our true, more real self is the sky. And if we learn in meditation to observe the thoughts and emotions, like if we identify more with the sky than the clouds, we can have this distance and observe the emotions and see that they're just passing, changing, unreal. And they're not even you, because you don't control your thoughts. That's the proof that they're not you. If they were you, you could decide to not be angry when you don't want to be angry, or to be angry when you want to be angry. But that's not how it works, and we know that's not how it works. So I think that emotions are actually when we're not accepting reality as it is. That's when emotions appear. Yes, it comes from thoughts. Thoughts come first, but the thought refuses some aspects of reality out of fear, as you said, self-preservation. A lot of that has to do with fear of letting go of the thoughts. Fear of, we are defending this illusory self that we think can be hurt, and that's why we have fear, and that we think must be satisfied also. So that's why we have desires. But if we can just accept reality as it is, there's no more emotions possible, because there's not going to be any thoughts saying no. So you have this discomfort I was talking about. You're sitting with discomfort in meditation, for example, and you can see clearly, because now you sign up for a retreat and you have 8 hours a day of sitting in silence. So now there's nowhere to go. So now you learn to see what's actually happening. and by seeing over and over, the mind repeats. The mind, especially in retreat, when there's no external stimulation, you see that your mind is very boring. It's stuck in some loops, and you can see them because now there's nothing else to see but to look at that. And you can see clearly that there's a pain. Your mind says something like, oh no, not another pain. Oh, how long is left before, how much time is left before the bell rings? Am I going to be in atrocious pain for another 20 minutes? And all these thoughts, you can see directly, these thoughts make the pain worse and worse and worse. And then you think, oh, it's unbearable. And when you think it's unbearable, it's unbearable. Now it's 10 times more. But if it's a good meditation teacher that you have, he will tell you how to deal with that. He will say, stay with the pain and increase your awareness of the pain and forget the thoughts. And eventually, you will learn to let go of your resistance. You will see directly. It's a direct feedback loop. When you let go of your resistance to a pain, the emotion goes away, and you see how much you were adding to that pain by refusing it. And it's usually a lot. So what's left is more than bearable usually, and sometimes it might even go away entirely. But a pain is a physical sensation. But emotions are very similar. They're very close to physical sensations. An emotion is a energetic sensation happening in the body. It's like between the mind and the body, but it's also disagreeable. It's also unpleasant, and you also refuse it as soon as you feel it. So you're stuck in a loop of emotions, and there are people who are constantly never quiet because of that, because their thoughts, make them nervous. Their sensation of emotions, of nervousness, generates more thoughts of, people can drive themselves into a panic that way. So what's the key? How to get out of emotions is to increase the volume of the sensations. If you have 9 units of consciousness, just feeling your emotion, any emotions, try that. We talk about emotions, but we barely know what it is because we always try to escape. Try to alleviate it by shouting back. If it's anger, try to calm yourself down by smoking, drinking, watching TV, thinking of something else, distracting yourself, eating. You never feel emotions. That's why people are addicted to painkillers, drugs, anything. It's because we cannot sit still and really feel what's going on here. And don't worry, it will change. It will change. We are maintaining things real, We are maintaining things that if we stop the pattern of, feeding the fire will stop very quickly. If we stop that feedback loop of thoughts, anger, angry thoughts, angry emotions, if we stop the loop, anger is just chemicals in your body, as you said earlier. And those chemicals might take a while to, like adrenaline, usually it's epinephrine, will take like 5 minutes maybe to get out of your system, and you're going to be all right. And you will have gained some freedom. You will have gained some actual experience on how to deal with your emotions, how to be patient. So to be patient is not keep thinking about what pisses you off about that guy. Stop the thinking. This is the least real part of it. Go to the emotion, the anger, and don't analyze. Don't start to think he deserves it, or you want to stop the thinking. So there's no analysis. It's just a sensation. And if you really feel it, quickly you will realize that how do I even know that it is anger? Because without the mind commenting, what is anger? It's might be intense, energetic sensation, usually here, around the heart and the throat. Could be the ears, could be warm. Your knees or your hands might be shaking a bit if it was really, And these are just symptoms of epinephrine, the hormones that is generated by your serenal glands. There's nothing, there. It's like drinking coffee, too much coffee. you can deal with that. There's no problem. But this requires determination. For a student to start to practice that in real time, not after the fact, when it's happening, it requires determination and maybe a little bit of practice. Because if you don't have this self-awareness, of what's going on, if you haven't learned to increase the volume of your, sensations, bodily sensations, if you're someone that is always up in your brain, the thinking mind, you will miss the first signs of anger, for example. But if you practice meditation every day, just 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you will develop this sensitivity, like as if you're developing an alarm system, a vigil that will tell you a red flag, that will raise a red flag when you feel your guts, tightening up, for example. Oh, there is anxiety here. Why is that? Then you rewind. What was I thinking about? Oh, I was thinking about that, appointment. And then you realize that you were making yourself, anxious, and you can drop the thoughts if you want and focus on your breath for a few moments. But if you haven't developed this awareness, you won't even know or notice that you are thinking. The what is it called? The therapy that really works. They say cognitive therapy, behavioral therapy. It's true that it works. If you can see your thoughts and stop the wrong thoughts, the wrong thought patterns, that can work, but it requires some level of mindfulness, awareness that most of us not only don't have, but we are actually losing a faculty. We are losing as a species, as faster than ever in human history because of all these, distractions, demonic tools. We can't even go to the bathroom without the phone now. So it's just the fear of discomfort. So learn to come back here, now. What's going on here and now? Physical sensations. It's not highly philosophical. It's not deep. It's not mystical. It's just sensations. Feel this ordinary feeling, these ordinary feelings that our ancestors, people of the past, knew, very well how to, connect to. But we are so much,
This thing you said, right, of being able to just tolerate discomfort, that's an important thing. It's an important and profound thing. So I've shared this before. About a year ago, I was on a hijra tour or hijra experience. We went with some friends walking through the desert from Mecca to Medina in an attempt to retrace the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ on his hijra, on his migration. And it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. Some 12 days of just trekking through the desert. And for me, again, I wasn't really physically prepared or conditioned. I didn't have a lot of experience in doing something like this. It was very difficult. And there was a lot of not just discomfort, but pain. Like after the first day, my body was in agonizing pain. My feet were getting blisters. Every step was painful. The terrain there is extremely difficult too, by the way. It's not just like flat sand desert. No, it's like constantly changing terrain from shifting sands to pebbles to gravel to rocks to mountain. It's like you're never at rest. Every step became painful. So every step was painful, again, with the pack, with weight. And in the beginning, I was protesting and protesting and protesting, like internally, occasionally outwardly, occasionally externally, but a lot of internal protest about my discomfort and my pain. And it was by day 3 or 4 when I just said, you know what, so be it. It's going to be painful. I accept it. Let's just do this. The moment that I accepted the pain and the discomfort is when it abated. That was such a profound experience. It's our resistance to pain that actually perpetuates it, that makes it more, that amplifies it, that prolongs it. You know, as they say, what you resist shall persist.
Exactly.
It's this, yeah, it was this resistance to pain, this refusal to accept it. And I realized life is pain. It's just part of life on earth. This is not paradise. This is not Jannah. This is not the heaven. This is the world. And pain is a part of it. Discomfort is a part of it. One of the most beautiful and incredible examples of this state of total surrender and acceptance is that of Abraham, the grandfather of the prophets, peace be upon him, in which he was thrown into the fire by the self-worshipper Nimrod. Abraham was thrown into the fire, a blazing inferno. Yet because he had reached such a level of submission and surrender to Allah, such a state of acceptance to Allah's will. I mean, this is exemplified even in the fact that when the angel was sent, the angel came and said, "Oh, Abraham, can we help you?" He said, "I know, my Lord knows my condition. He can do with me as he likes." That is the level of surrender that Abraham reached to, alayhi salam. He was thrown into the fire, and what does Allah Almighty say in the Quran? The fire for him was cool and peaceful. Even the physical fire, a raging inferno, did not burn Abraham alayhi salam. And this is real. It's not just a metaphorical, allegorical story. This is a reality. Fire could not even burn Abraham alayhi salam because of his level of submission and surrender, his level of acceptance to discomfort. That was his level of belief, real belief, that there is no God but Allah. That nothing can affect him or his state except Allah, his nearness to Allah. Nothing in the world could affect him. And this is, of course, the difference between Islam and Iman. This is what makes the religion real. The religion is Islam. It is spirituality that makes the religion real. And spirituality is this. It's this internal dimension. Right? Spirituality, if we use that term, is enabling or allowing the reality of the religion to take root in the heart for the belief to become real. As Allah says in the Quran, to the people that had just embraced Islam, you are not yet believers. For belief has not yet taken root in your heart. That takes time, that takes effort, that takes work. That is the internal jihad. Going to lectures, going to the mosque, praying, this is external jihad. Internal jihad is being patient, surrendering and submitting internally, emotionally. And I think one of the most powerful things that we can learn as human beings, and especially as Muslims, is the ability to learn to let go. Something grips us. Right? You'll see something triggers you, something grips you in your mind, and now you're fixated on it. You can't let it go. It's like you need immediate resolution of that issue. And so in attempting to force resolution, you just create more chaos. You create more mayhem and destruction in your life by not learning how to be patient, by not just surrendering and allowing the thing to resolve itself. We have to remember and realize that we're going to be tested in this life. You're going to be tested. Your Islam is going to be tested. Do you truly believe La ilaha illallah? Or are you going to protest and complain at every step? Are you going to fight every step of the way? Allah is trying to bring you back to Him, but in order to get back to Allah, you have to leave yourself. You know, we're now in the last few days and nights of Ramadan. Inshallah, tonight is the 27th of Ramadan, Laylatul Qadr. Inshallah. Allah knows best. But often seen as one of the major nights that upon which can fall Laylatul Qadr, the night of power. Ramadan is almost over. And we have to ask ourselves, how much did I benefit? How much did I progress in this Ramadan? Did I just progress externally and outwardly, or did I progress also inwardly? The Prophet ﷺ said, there are many who will take nothing from their fasting except hunger and thirst. That's if we're just fasting from food and from drink and so on. But as I discussed, for example, in the Ramadan Success Program, that's not sufficient. That's only half of the equation. We also have to be fasting from anger. We have to be fasting from fear. We We have to be fasting from jealousy. We have to be fasting from suspicion. We have to be fasting from backbiting. We have to be fasting from all of these other things to make our fast real. That's the reality of fasting, right? Outwardly and inwardly. And that is what makes the religion real. And what is the religion? Allah says Almighty in the Quran, Inna Dina Indullah Islam. The religion before Allah is Islam. The religion before Allah is surrender, submission. He is in control. He will do as He likes. So again, just a reminder for myself, for us, for all of us who are listening, tuning in, we have to make our religion real. And that means not just outward observance and attention, but also inward observance and attention. Now, you mentioned meditation, John, as a tool. And maybe we can dive into this a little bit. Why is this practice, and what is meditation? Let's just again clarify again and again what meditation is. I would simply say it is simply sitting in stillness. It is sitting in surrender. It is being still, being surrendered, being in a state of submission, quieting the self, surrendering the self inwardly, prostrating the self inwardly, and to do this at least for a few minutes a day as a practice, to learn how to gain control over the self. Otherwise, the self, which is not what we are, we're not ourselves, right? This is a revelation, perhaps. We're not our thoughts. We're not our minds. We're not our thinking. We're not our emotions. This is like the self, the nafs, is a steed. It's a vehicle that we've been granted. And if we don't learn to control it and master it, to discipline it, like a wild horse, it'll just run left and right, and we'll just be hanging on for the ride. But it's not going to get us to where we want to go. The only way to get to the destination, which is where we want to go, back home to the divine presence of God, is by learning to master and control and discipline the self, to train the self. Meditative practice is an invaluable tool in disciplining the self, in quieting the self, in surrendering the self. If we're not practicing this, we're leaving half of Islam on the table. This is how our Prophet ﷺ began, with meditation in a cave, in isolation, in seclusion, being with himself, quieting himself, surrendering himself, opening himself so that he may receive knowledge, wisdom, guidance, and connection from his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. So maybe you can speak a little bit, John, about the importance of meditative practice, even for just a few minutes a day, in learning to make the religion real.
Well, it's without meditation, I don't think it's possible to practice proper to do anything spiritually. But again, what is meditation? We should define that word carefully, because there's so many different things that are called meditation online, especially online nowadays. But what I call meditation, there's two different things actually. There is a part that is training the mind, I'd say. You can develop a more efficient mind, a more focused, a more, a mind that is like more obedient. There's a training. This requires effort and training that can be very useful. But there's also the other aspect, which is just being, that we also talked about, which is not about doing, which is about not doing actually. So I'd say, if meditation is about stillness, how action can bring meditation? It's impossible. You have to stop doing if you want to be still. So imagine your mind as a lake. If you keep, making waves by thinking, by agitating the water, you can never see clearly the bottom of the lake. That's the image they use. So you have to learn to stop doing, and not by itself, on its own, the water will clarify, because the sand, the dirt will settle at the bottom. And that's truly, I think, what happens in meditation. So learning to sit still, preferably sitting, I would recommend. But if you cannot sit, you can meditate lying down. You have to learn not to fall asleep. while doing this. And I did it. Now, but I developed a problem with insomnia, because I was too good at being awake, lying down. But ideally, you're sitting, okay? You can do standing, can do walking eventually, but you start sitting still, and you just try to observe what's going on. Try to not move. You can start physically, the most tangible part of yourself, easier to identify than the mind maybe. Just start feeling your body and close your eyes and decide for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I won't be moving. And you will see all the resistance. You will see you will see how much your body wants to move, but it's not your body actually. You will see how much your mind will create discomfort. Your mind will create itchiness on unbearable itchiness that you have to scratch, which weren't there before you started meditating. This is all the mind's tricks. The mind is panicking. The mind doesn't like boredom. The mind wants distractions. So you have to sit with boredom. It's very boring. It's boring only when you don't want to do it. Because when you try to do it, really, there's nothing boring. There's enough to keep you occupied. There's enough happening. Because if you sit still long enough, you will see a lot of things that you are doing that are making you miserable. You're going to see it, and you're going to stop doing it. That's one of the benefits of meditation. You will see that you're making yourself miserable, angry, nervous by your thoughts, But at first, you can't see your thoughts because you're always moving. So when you sit for meditation, if you move, you're agitating your mind. So if you decide, I'm not going to be moving for 10 minutes, but after 2 minutes, just a little adjustment. Okay, I feel better now. If after 3 minutes just a little stretch, now I can meditate. You don't understand. Now you're ruining your meditation because just those 2 little, movements agitated your mind and made your meditation, made you, regress or step backwards 3 or 4 steps. So you really have to be stronger. You have to be strong. Don't move. And observe your breath. Observe your breath. It's easy. It's always happening. But then there's another trick. Don't modify your breath. Because if you modify your breath, there is tension there. Even if you try to breathe deeper, to breathe slowly, it might work. But still, there is a tension there because there is a doing. So try to not even do that. Try to really, really surrender. Surrender to what's happening. Look at your breathing pattern as if it's happening to someone else. As if you're looking at a child sleeping. You're looking at the child's abdomen moving as if it's not you. Just observe. And you will see that just by doing that, your breathing will become deeper, calmer, slower. You will calm down naturally as a side effect. Actually, people want to surrender and let go. You said let go. People want to let go and they can't do it. But they're trying to let go of the discomfort. Let go of the resistance to the discomfort. That's what we are trying to do here. So that's another thing. It's going to be uncomfortable. The longer you sit. If it's not uncomfortable after 10 minutes, sit for 20 or sit for an hour. I personally, if I sit for 2 hours, I know I can reach intense pain. I did it. There's going to be discomfort. It's very easy. And don't run away. Sit with it. And this will be very invaluable. This is incredible training. This will help you in every situations in life. Stand in line at the drugstore or anywhere. Stand in line and look at people. How people are agitated, how people are impatient because they're in pain physically, and then they can't stand. They can't stand standing in line because they have no training. But it shouldn't be something we have to train in. It should be our natural state, being comfortable in our own body and mind without doing anything. People of the past knew how to do that. After a long day of work in the field, the old farmer was sitting on his porch looking at the sunset with his wife. They didn't have to talk. They were very peaceful and healthy. Actually, in their minds, they were very healthy. But us people, we have to train that because we're not working physically anymore, because we learn earlier and earlier in life to cut off, to not go below the neck, to always escape anything uncomfortable, with Tylenol or, and we become actually averse to feeling, I would say. We're afraid of feeling. I think I've seen people, I think I've noticed people really afraid of feeling. This is scary going inside. There's the old myth of the dragon that you have to fight to reach to the treasure behind the dragon. The dragon is just the surface of yourself. The treasure is underneath, and it's not that deep, actually. Don't worry too much about the dragon, but it requires courage. Yes, it requires courage and faith. Actually, I think that Islam made a big difference in my practice, because letting go when you are Buddhist is different. If you don't believe in God, who are you letting go into? Who are you surrendering? Are you surrendering your life to? Who are you trusting? You need to trust. You need a lot of trust. So you need to have your proper concept of who God is, and that God is love and compassion also, and that God is not just this, judge that is looking over your shoulder to criticize you and judge you. No, God wants you to reach that peace and that stillness. God is not your enemy in that endeavor. So trust God, relax, He's there. Actually, if you go deep enough, you will see you're not even there. If I go at the center of myself, I'm not even there myself. But God is always there. And if you can still your mind a little bit, that you have a chance of feeling the divine presence, or at least some clues.
Yeah. That's a good metaphor, a good example. The dragon guarding the treasure. The dragon is at the entrance to the cave. The cave is deep within, and that's where the treasure is. The treasure is buried. And that's what we have to do. We have to get past the dragon of the self, enter deep into the cave, and find the treasure. And what is the treasure? It's all Almighty's divine presence. This is the ultimate treasure. Perhaps the most valuable thing we can do as Muslims is this, what John was saying: learn to be, just to be. Just to be in a state of acceptance and surrender to what is, whatever it happens to be in this moment, in a state of surrender to this moment. That is how we make the religion real. And again, just to kind of briefly summarize, meditation is an invaluable tool and practice in learning how to become still and learning how to surrender. And this is why this was the first course I ever created, the Islamic meditation program. So for anybody who would like a bit more context and information and training on that, well, I would invite you then to look into that. And you can, of course, find that as well as a myriad of other resources, including one-on-one coaching, if anybody's interested, at the website borderpoint.com. And with that, we'll conclude. We're just at about time here. I want to thank you, John, for joining me today. And I want to thank and bless everybody for tuning in. May Allah Almighty accept all of our fasting and our prayers and guide us to excellence, both outwardly and inwardly, and to making our religion real, whole, complete, and to attaining to His divine presence, to His divine pleasure, and to success both in this life and the next. Thank you, John.
Thanks to you. Thanks for the opportunity for this. These meetings are amazing. I think opportunities to have clarify things like that. Meditation, as you said, I think is essential, and we need to make it real. We need to make it simple and real, but we need to practice. We need to sit at least 10 minutes a day without moving.
I mean, inshallah. And this is our goal, right? To help and support you guys in your path, in your religion, in your faith, in your spiritual development, in your personal growth. So if you find this content beneficial, please, if you're seeing this on YouTube, like and subscribe to the channel. Share this perhaps with a friend or family member who you think might benefit. And if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or on any other platform, do give us a good review and rating. We would appreciate it. Okay, to your divine and eternal success, be well, everyone. Fi aman Allah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.